Now back to John Berendt, a man who truly doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to do it. John is the author of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which owns the title for the most weeks ever spent on the New York Times bestseller list. Just a paltry 216 weeks. So I'm bad at math. Surprise, surprise. I'm an English major. I was like, how many years is that? Like 4 years plus. That's amazing. Amazing. Also, finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. So this is kind of fun. And 2 years after it was published, the book had single-handedly, and I can say that, I haven't fact-checked it, I'm going to say it, increased the tourism in Savannah by 46%. Which, if we're going to talk about dollars, because let's just talk about money, right? From $600 million a year to over $2 billion afterwards. We have a rainmaker here, people. John also wrote The City of Fallen Angels, another New York Times bestseller. And we're going to get into some of his history as a magazine editor because I really dig that too. So welcome, John. We're delighted to have you.
Glad to be here.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. You were born in Syracuse. You went to Harvard. You worked on the Lampoon, which I found was really cool. You moved to New York City. You're entrenched in the magazine world. You were an editor of New York Magazine. And then you're working for Esquire as a monthly columnist. And back in the day, if you were a monthly columnist for Esquire, that was a pretty cushy gig. Yeah, slightly jealous. So why did you go to Savannah?
I didn't go to Savannah. I came to Charleston with friends.
Right. Yeah.
And
there we go.
And I was freelancing, and I didn't have to be anywhere on Monday, and they all went back to New York, and I thought, well, look at the map. Oh, there's Savannah down the coast. And so I just went. I mean, I happened to know people in New York who knew people from Georgia and people in Savannah. So on my way down, I called them and I arranged to meet some people on the way down. And when I arrived in Savannah, I was floored. I was dazzled by the city. I'd never seen anything like it. And so I just drove around the squares and looked at the houses, and I got a hotel room. And I met people. I mean, some of the people were ones who had been recommended for me to meet. And I began to feel, I spent a week there, I began to feel there's something different about the people here in Savannah. They all have an ironic sense of humor. And it's delightful, and it's very edgy. And I don't even know if they recognize this, but the true Savannahans do have a keen sense of humor. But I didn't think anything about a book, so I came back to New York and decided to scope it out a little more. And the more I found out about things going on in Savannah, the more enchanted I was. This is a book of enchantment. I'm a reporter for sure. I could show you my loose leaf notebooks of the notes I took in Savannah and the transcripts of the interviews that I have, about 25 such thick books. But there's nothing hard scrabble about what I was doing. I was in love with the city. And every quirky character was just another character I loved. And I think if you're writing a book, it's great to love your characters, even if they're bad. Bad people, murderers even. You have to, and I discovered for the first time that there were people I did not even like, but I loved because they were my characters. And I don't want to get into now. I will later answer questions about how I work. how I write. Other people write in different ways.
We're going to get there, but let's talk about those sources and the subjects, right?
Yeah.
So as a writer myself, I'm rereading the book. I grew up in Savannah, I should say that. So and then moved to New York City to be in magazines in 1994, 95. So we just kind of crossed paths, really. With your sources, your stuff. Let's just call them your characters.
Yeah.
Did they know that they were did they think they were talking to a writer, or did they think they were talking to someone who was writing a book?
Well, when I can tell, let me tell you a story that leads up to answering that question. When I arrived in Savannah, and I was introduced to this old woman who showed me around Savannah. Mary Hardy was her name, and she was a very starchy old Savannian. And we were in Bonaventure Cemetery when I told her that I was considering writing a book on Savannah. And she looked at me and she said, I should tell you, Mr. Berendt, that the combination of being from New York and being a writer is deadly. Especially for Savannahans, because I said, why? She said, it went right back to before the Civil War, when Savannah had the largest auction of slaves ever held in America, 420 slaves, sold by Pierce Butler, who was descended from the framers of the Constitution. Anyway, he was very rich. He sold 460 slaves, and that was only half of his inventory, so to speak. Anyway, she said it was a notorious auction because Horace Greeley, the famous editor of the New York Tribune, it was determined to make it a horrific story. And he sent his key reporter, Mortimer Thompson, to Savannah to cover the auction. Mortimer Thompson told nobody that he was a reporter, not at all. He walked around with a catalog of slaves in his hand as if appraising the merchandise. But he didn't tell anybody. And then he went back to New York and wrote a really scathing article about it. And so she said, so you see, Mr. Berendt, we have had our problems with New York writers. and I said, well, and she said he didn't placard his mission. I said, well, suppose I do placard my mission. Suppose I make it clear that I'm a writer and I'm gathering material for a book. Openly, I'm not going to hide the fact that this is my interest. She said, that's very sporting of you. She said, but if you do that, if you tell people what you're doing, you'll have another problem. Nobody will talk to you. Well, Savannahans can't stop talking. They love it. They love nothing more than to sit on the porch and gossip and talk and talk. And when I would call somebody, someone would say to me, you ought to go see the Forsyths or whoever. And I'd call them up and I'd say, this guy told me to talk to you about Savannah in the book I'm writing. And I would invariably say, they would say, well, why don't you come for cocktails? Let's make it early, 4 o'clock. We'd get started drinking early, and we would talk and we would drink, because drink that's a favorite pastime, and it helps the talking too. So and we would talk and talk. It was fascinating, and I was taking notes the whole time openly. And
you are taking notes.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I would take some notes, but
they knew you. They knew you.
Oh, yeah. I was taking notes, but the trick was I had a tape recorder in my pocket, so I would get it right. But I always had a notebook out. In fact, I was almost famous for having a notebook in my back pocket, and I'd whip it out, and people would say, "Oh, he's writing for his book," So I really wasn't like Mortimer Thompson of the Tribune, hiding what I was doing. But anyway, we would talk and drink and talk and drink, and the sun would go down, and no one would turn the lights out. No, there was never any food. Drinking. And after a while, all there was these teeth in the darkness, and I got what I wanted eventually, every time. So that was an answer to a question so long ago I don't know what it was.
So it was a great answer. We're off to a good start. Did you? I feel like that's me, but that's not me. That phone ringing. Did you start to write? I mean, how long into your time in Savannah did you start to write? I mean, when did it occur to you, like, wow, there's a book here. There's something, right? I mean,
Yes.
obviously you're a journalist. You're you get it. You've got a nose for it, and you're down there. But how quickly did you say, well, there might be something here? And you hadn't written a book before, right?
Never written a book. I had worked at Esquire, in fact, and I was first an editor at Esquire right out of college, and the Lampoon, and then New York Magazine.
Right.
I was the editor. So I was used to magazine journalism, actually, and I'd never written anything of any length, so I didn't even know if I could do it. So
sorry, I'm going to interrupt. So, like a magazine story would be something in the order of back in the day, 5,000 words would be a lengthy, 5,000 to 6,000 words would be a lengthy feature. And when we're talking about midnight, 250,000 words, right?
I think it's about 200.
200,000 words. So vastly different type of writing. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I came down, I first came to Savannah in '82. In '84, I went back determined to write a book.
Right.
And by that time, Jim Williams had shot and killed Danny Hansford. So I knew that was something. I wasn't sure that was going to be the center of the book, but eventually it did become. I didn't know I had a book until pretty much into it, when there's an audible click in your head that says, you got it. And I knew I had chapters or articles, which read like chapters. I knew I had those when I started, but the book itself took a little longer for me to be confident that I had a book. But I'll tell you something. The thing that happened to me was most surprising. I'm typing away about Danny Hansford being shot. Chablis is telling Jim Williams about that. And then there's I'm very sharp into that particular chapter. I put another page in to start the next chapter, and it was an out-of-body experience. I typed part 2. And that's the way I left it, because that's exactly how the book is divided. It was not predetermined. I didn't think, okay, I'll do the next one, be chapter 2. No, it just happened. So, because the pace of the book and the writing of the book and chasing down stories all became really all I was doing in life.
And it sounds pretty fun.
It was a lot of fun.
So, all right, let's jump ahead. I feel if I understand my history, my understanding of the history of this correctly, you've written the book and you have an agent, and you send it to your agent, who says not going to work. Tell us about that.
Well, I decided to write the book without. I mean, I had an agent, kind of, but not really. But since I've been in the magazine business, I knew all the agents in New York, because I was buying stories from them all along. And so I decided I'm not going to have a deadline that I have to meet. I don't want to have an advance that I have to get back if I don't write the book. So I'll do it. I'll just do it while I did other work to support myself. So when I was finished, I called the best agent in New York, whom I knew, and she said, well, let me see it. So I sent it to her. She was going off to Germany for some kind of book
fair.
fair.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear from her for several weeks. And when she came back, she sent me a note saying it was fun to read, but it's too local. And I thought, I mean, this was Lynn Nesbitt.
There it is.
For the longest time, I didn't mention her name because I didn't get into a fight with her, and she was an old friend. So.
And she was a terrific agent.
She's Tom Walt's agent. So I didn't, and I wasn't upset, because who wants to have energized agent. She was not interested in the book. She later blamed her assistants for that. Anyway, I gave it to another agent who, in fact, had worked in the past with this Lynn Nesbitt, but who loved the book. The new agent, young woman, loved it. And she called me up and said, I love your book. And I said, do you think you can publish it? She said, of course we can. We will. She sent it to 5 leading publishers, and they all wanted it. One of the publishers, and I forget exactly which one it was, said, we want this book very much. It's great. We love it. But we'd like Mr. Berendt to make one change. And she said to him, you're out. And they didn't, no more conversation with that agent. And she's a brilliant, wonderful agent whom I'm very close to, even now, 30 years later. Suzanne Gluck.
Oh, yeah, another powerhouse.
A powerhouse. Yeah. She was very young then. She was not a powerhouse. She is now.
All right, so let's talk about it. 1994. Book's ready to be published, 25,000 copies, which, you know, it's a good number, not a crazy good number, right? What happened? Like, like, sometimes, you know, I've talked to writers who've had books come out, and they talk about publication day as the calm before the calm. Like, nothing happens. Nobody buys your book. But this didn't happen with you.
No. The promotion, well, here's what happened. Random House decided, we're going to let this thing build before we publish it. Because they were getting, what they do in those days, and probably still do, they have representatives all over the country who go to bookstores and to display the wares of the particular publisher. And Random House had representatives all over the States who were writing back saying, this book is going to be big, print enough copies. So they decided, okay. And the officers of Random House agreed. And so they said, okay, we could have it ready for the fall of 93. And that was almost a year away. And they said, but we don't want to come out in the fall because every big author comes out in the fall with the Christmas book, and you'll be buried. So we're going to wait till the next year, in a quiet period in January, because nothing. And that in those days, nothing came out in January and February.
Right.
You could count it, and you won't be snowed under. You'll be the one that gets the attention, and that's exactly what happened. Good Morning America. I was on Good Morning America.
You were hosting it in Savannah, right? Like
they called me. There's somebody read a galley at Good Morning America, and they said we want to do a program with John Berendt in Savannah the first week of the book being out, and so it just burst out of the gates in the first week. And as a matter of fact, I've now been on Good Morning America 7 times. I told, including Chablis one time, the black drag queen. But I played the game too. I said, look, they're asking me to go on the CBS Morning and the NBC, I forget the name of it. What is it? The Today Show. And I'm not going, because I like you guys at ABC. And so it just piled it on after that. So it had an unusual life. Really, it had every advantage. I have been extremely lucky, I have to say. And people say, well, how do you account for the success of Midnight? I said, large part of it is luck.
Yeah. So you mentioned Lady Chablis. Let's talk about her. One of my favorite anecdotes is that a few years later, Clint Eastwood announces that he's going to be making a movie, right? And so he hasn't really consulted with Lady Chablis, and she says he's not making a movie unless I'm in it. And she's in it.
Yes. Yeah, he went to see her perform. She was a natural comedian. Her timing was perfect, and she was hilariously funny. And he saw her on a good night, and he put her in the movie as Chablis.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Any other stories you want to share about her?
Most of the good ones are in the book.
Yeah.
But I've told, I can't even describe some of the things. I told the people who are making a musical of Midnight on Broadway some of the things that I noticed about her after the book had come out. And I'm not going to physically show you what it entails. It's a very, very funny. It's almost too raw for Broadway, but that one incident. And she never stopped. She was always on top of everything, and her repertoire was original and changed from time to time. But I really did pour everything of her into the book.
Yeah, and it seems that way. Also, I mean, you didn't pour. I mean, you as a writer, you don't think about the cover. But I've always been enchanted with that cover of Bird Lady, right?
Oh, that's the best cover ever.
Yeah, and Jack Lee. I grew up in Savannah, and everybody had the coffee table on their coffee table. The book Nets and Doors, which was about shrimpers. It was basically a photographic. It was a photo essay book, and he also wrote a book about oystering
as a way of life.
As a way of life, yep. Which. Pat Conroy wrote the text too. So growing up in Savannah, Jack was. I mean, we all certainly put Jack up on a pedestal, and then there was that picture that became the cover.
Yeah, no matter what format the book is sold in, it will always have the bird girl on the cover, because and Savannah uses it on billboards to advertise Savannah on the outside of Savannah. Yeah, it's, I think, the best. When I saw it, I only saw a blurry color photocopy of it, and I knew it even then that it was going to be gorgeous and stunning. And then when I saw the finished cover, all fine and beautifully done, I knew what it was going to do for the book, and it did.
So there was a time, right, when that book came out, and people. The Bird Girl was in the Bonaventure Cemetery. People would go and steal it or take it or vandalize. Not vandalize it, but take it, and then it would come back. And now it's in the Telfair Museum. It's
in the Telfair.
Yeah,
actually, in the Telfair. They've moved it around in the museum. It's on long-term loan. When the book came out, the family that owned the plot. Now that was not a tombstone. It was just an ornament, so it wasn't sacrilegious in any way. We hadn't approached the family about this, and they intimated that they were upset. And then they went and they insured it for $10 million. How upset could they have been?
So also let's talk about that. There were a number of cottage industries, right? That these hot side hustles that were spawned from this book. I mean, we all know. I talked about tourism. You've met in the book itself. You've talked in the afterward. You talk about how many new buses people needed to do the tours around Savannah. I remember the increase, but. I think my favorite side hustle, if you want to call it that, is the Bird Lady statues. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, since that was the most famous graphic having to do with Midnight.
I mean, the only graphic.
The only graphic, right. People did candlesticks. They did little statuettes. They did all kinds of things using that image of the bird girl. And some of them were pretty tasteless or just not well executed. And the granddaughter of the sculptor who had done this in 1927 or so started suing people. And so finally what she did was she made a deal with a manufacturer to manufacture accurate statues. And he copied the Bird Girl with laser measurements. And so what he's producing is exactly what was in Bonaventure. And it's very high quality. And he's making a lot of money, and she's making a lot of money. And I'm sorry I didn't do it.
All right, so we're 30 years later, right? And those larger than life cast of characters are gone.
Every one of them.
Gone. Which is, I mean, they're so vivid in the pages, it's hard to imagine they would ever be gone. They're not gone, but they're gone. So it brings me to this question of, do you think Jim Williams was guilty?
Kind of. I've become friendly with his nieces who now own Mercer House. I had been unfriendly with their mother, Jim's sister. She took a dislike to me. I don't know why. She made about $2 or $3 million out of that. But so I had no relationship with the family at all. Although I knew that one of the nieces, was very friendly and liked me, but stayed away. So the mother died, and along comes the plans for Broadway musical. And so the producer, not me, the producer approached these two nieces of Jim Williams and invited them to come to my house in New York without asking me. I have a townhouse that Midnight built, frankly, or bought, I should say. I didn't build it. But, and so I developed a very friendly rapport with them. One of the reasons they're being so cooperative is that number one, they're very nice girls. But number two, it costs a lot of money to keep up a mansion like Mercer House. Even when Jim was in jail and he was dealing antiques from his jail cell, he was able to keep the upkeep flowing. But these girls just don't know how to do it, and I sympathize with them. So they're cooperating because they think that if there is a musical, if it does well, it will help them. So yeah, I think he's guilty.
All right, so musical, is there a timeline at all, or it's way out there?
The funny thing is that I didn't know that things were this way, but if you have a book that's bought by producers of a musical, and I refused to write the script for the musical, what I did very well, and there was nowhere for me except down in terms of writing the script. I didn't. The same thing with the movie. So I said I had no part of it, but they said I could. They hoped I would advise them and stuff like that. So I took that seriously, and when I got a script, the first script I got was from a different writer. Well, actually, the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Alfred Urey, and he wrote "Driving Miss Daisy." And he won an Oscar, an Emmy, and whatever the other one is.
One of those.
The theater.
Tony.
Tony. Yeah. So he was Broadway. He was royalty on Broadway. And you don't with royalty on Broadway. And so the producers said they were very unhappy with Alfred Urey. A very, very nice man, really is. He came from Atlanta, and the producers mistakenly thought, oh, well, Atlanta, Savannah, same thing. That was a big mistake.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was very gracious, and after 5 years, he begged off the project, and we were delighted. But when playwrights are brought in on a project like this, they become the authors of the musical. And the first time I saw that, I thought, someone else is well, I guess they are. But actually, a playwright's a playwright, not an author. But anyway, this is very, very codified on Broadway. And you don't treat royalty badly, which is why Alfred Urey was attached to the project for so long. So now, if he'd been fired, let's say, by the producers, there'd be this stench on Broadway toward this project. And so he was treated well, and he talks well about the project. So, but the original author has no rights when it comes to the script. I can advise if they're willing to listen, and I've done a lot of that, and I see there are some things they take to heart and fix. But I don't know. There's more to go. It's going to open in Chicago in July, and then they'll keep working on it. It'll be there for a few weeks, and then it will in rehearsal, and then it will open in Chicago, and after that, Broadway. If it, I don't know. I don't know anything about the business of it, but it's been a stunner for me to see someone else going around as the author of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. But that's the way it works. That's the way it works.
All right, so back to you as the author, and probably the last question before we take some questions. Did you leave anything on the cutting room floor?
There's a minor character that I really shoehorned everything in. I didn't leave anybody out. And I say minor character, he was a minor character, but a very funny little minor character. His name was Reuben Ware. And one of the things, he was an inventor. But all of his one of the things he made was Aunt Grace's carpet shampoo. Grace was his wife. And then our Aunt Grace's shampoo for women. Same ingredients. he was a charmer and funny. And if I had more time, in my way of thinking, I would have put him in. But he didn't. I hadn't written the chapter, so I left him out. But that's about it.
That's about it, yeah. Well, the book itself is a testament. I have to say, a lot of folks on the Garden Gun staff, much younger than you and I, who have never read this book. And as this was coming, as we started talking about this, they all got copies, right? And they all either downloaded or got, bought, on Amazon or what have you. Went to the bookstore. And I can say to a T, every one of them said, "Oh my God, I can't stop." And it's true. It's to this day, 30 years later, same with me. I read it in 94 or 5. I can't stop. I started reading, 2 weeks ago, and I'm done. I mean, just tremendous. Yeah, props to you. Wonderful job.
Yeah.
Let's see if anybody has any questions. Right there.
I have one for each of you. Who wants to go first?
John, definitely.
Did you actually attend the Christmas party?
Actually, the all-male Christmas party? No.
For the publisher, when the book came out and you were living in New York City as a native Savannian, did you feel that it was accurate?
The book? What I felt like was, wow, I've been living in that town for so long, and I never paid attention to the most interesting characters. And to me, it was a class in writing, right? Like I'd been around those squares, I'd heard about some of those people. Sonny Seiler, I used to fish behind Sonny Seiler's dock, and that was a fishing spot to me. And Cabbage Island, where Jim Williams made his money, so it was an immediate lesson that sometimes the story's right in front of you. So I have John to thank for that.
Comment about that because people have asked me, "Do you think someone from Savannah could have written Midnight?" I said no.
No.
They wouldn't know. They'd be too used to what goes on, and they wouldn't know what will excite the people outside Savannah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
It takes an outsider.
Outside. I was an outsider.
Back there, yeah.
Hi.
Yes. How dare she?
So fill us in. I don't even know the.
This is a woman I didn't know, and the book suddenly popped up called After Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and it had a statue on the front, which was a little bit like my cover.
Okay, got it.
And what got me, I mean, everybody has the right to do something like that. I mean, it's a free country. You can write what you want, say what you want. I own the title, but even if you have a copyright, your title really can be used in some ways by other people. What annoyed me was that there were some things, many things, that I dug for and found and had to use all my wiles and my abilities to dig out. And she just took them and ran them as if she did it. In other words, I found a lot of things out about the story as I worked on it that she didn't have to do anything but take it out of my book. That's what annoyed me. She had an easy run of it. Also,
get this man some liquor.
Her best source, by the way, speaking of Sonny Seiler, was Sonny Seiler.
Right.
Because that was his biggest case. He was not a criminal lawyer. He was a civil lawyer. And but there were things I didn't put in the book that he wished I had about him. So he filled her in about a lot of things that I didn't think were important. But so she had, and he introduced her to some people that I had rooted out through hard work. And so he was her best source. But he was the defense counsel. He never told her the truth. And he didn't tell me the truth, but I knew the truth anyway.
All right, in the back there. Sorry, I'll come next. Yeah, right.
So I'm a fellow at Harvard University, and I work with undergraduates at Harvard, and they're all going to work for consulting firms, and McKinsey. None of them are going to go write novels. So I'm wondering what your advice is for 22-year-old you and 22-year-olds of today about what to do with a great interest and an interest and a curiosity in life and how to
Well, the first thing you do is write a journal and write it as a kind of short story every day. Whenever you do it, I mean, I can do it every day, but I mean, write it as a story, not just your story or the events that you got involved in, but as far, I mean, you start writing short pieces that could be turned into stories. But I have lots of techniques I could tell you about.
Yeah, I mean, Gay Talese was a mentor of yours, right?
Yeah, Gay Talese and Tom Wolfe. They were working constantly for Esquire when I was on the staff of Esquire in the 60s. And when I wrote Midnight, I had lots of little tricks that I played on myself when I was writing it. And one of the things was the most important object for a writer is to understand what a reader gets from your written page. And it's not always easy to tell because you've been working on it for maybe all day. And so it's not fresh in your mind anymore. So what you want to do is achieve some distance from it. Well, one thing you can do is put it away for a day or two. But if you want instant results and you want to find out right away, you show it to someone who's a reader friend of yours. But there's not always that person available. So what I used to do at 3 a.m. when I was writing, I had written a page, I would call my apartment in New York. The answering service would pick up, answering machine, and I would read the passage into the answering machine and hang up. And then I would call back and hear myself reading what I had just written, 900 miles from Savannah to New York, 900 miles back. I could always tell at least something about how somebody coming to this for the first time would react to it. So that was something I devised, and I was in New York at Gay's apartment, townhouse, and I told him that I did that, and he started laughing. He said, "I do the same thing, but not with a phone. What I do is when I type a page, I tack it to the opposite wall. Go to my desk with my binoculars. I read what I had just written." And you have to go to some length to be that distant from the piece or the text you've just written.
I think they charge a lot more for this on YouTube, and they call it a Masterclass. All right, last question. And way in the back, yeah.
Hi, you mentioned the character who you left out. So I'm wondering, in terms of the structure of the narrative, how did you decide what to leave in or put in and what to sort of take out? Or was that more of an editorial decision?
Not one word was changed by Random House. Not one. And it's not that. Well, my agent said to me, we find that books written by editors are the cleanest manuscripts that publishers receive. They didn't change a word. I made editorial decisions of my own, just on how it sounded. I mean, how it felt. One thing I did do, I mean, I don't know if all writers do this, but I want to get all the right words and images to express what I have in mind. And there's more than just the right words. There's the right rhythm. And Ezra Pound once said, "Anybody can copy my style. Nobody can copy my rhythm." And there were certain sentences where I knew that I had to put 2 more syllables over there to make it sound right, because I have a spoken style. It should all sound as though someone is speaking this. Some writers write for a full page without taking a breath. I don't write that way. And there's a line in the book that I can't quite remember when I'm in front of a lot of people. Joe Odom, the character in the book, who's a deadbeat lawyer, charmer, piano player. The first moment I met him, he was on his knees behind his house, connecting his power line, which was dead because he hadn't paid his electric bills, to the house next door. And there was this big shower of sparks, and his lights went on. The lights in the other house dimmed and went back on. And I'm going to follow this up. I'm sure it's only one sentence. I wrote it that I just watched yeah, the book, I could find it for you.
I wish I had it.
A life-threatening act of something larceny.
Yeah.
Life-threatening gambit of something larceny, and the sentence would then have read it would have a waltz rhythm.
Right.
Like a waltz.
Right. And so that's the point, right? Where we have a master of words, right? I mean, literally, you can read this amazing thing. It's like an oyster or an onion, right? You can read this book just for the story. You can read it for the rhythm. You can read it for the journalism. You can read it for all the different layers. And I believe that is why 30 years later, we're still here. I mean, how many books 30 years later are we sitting around talking about and celebrating an amazing achievement? So, again, thank you all for coming. Thank you, John.
I just thought of the sentence.
Good.
I thought of the sentence. Yes, I just thought of the sentence. It should have read a life-threatening gambit of high-voltage larceny.
There it is. Yeah. and honestly, we talk about that all the time at Gardening Up. Every word matters. So we appreciate that. We appreciate y'all. Thank you for coming. I think we're good. Yeah. Thanks.